Hare Krishna, Guru Prasad Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Please accept mine. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
How are you this morning?
Fine, by Krishna's grace.
By Krishna's grace. So this is a series of interviewing GBC leaders. What we're doing is just introducing different concepts to the viewers that we have. As you know, we started this GBC strategic planning COVID-19 when the COVID started to come on strong and it became a concern. So we wanted to help the devotees in that regard. And then in addition, speaking with numerous devotees. So far, we've seemed to be pleasing the devotees, and particularly having them hear from leaders, especially GBC leaders, is particularly heartwarming and good. So usually we start a little bit with a little bit of your background. This is a worldwide audience, and some people may not know you so intimately. So maybe tell us a little bit about how you came to Krishna consciousness and how you ended up being how did you ever become a GBC, and then everything. I mean, you have a remarkable life. Tell us some of those highlights.
Well, I met the devotees first time. I thought they were Mongolian exchange students. That was the only experience I had of people with long ponytails. And so I got a magazine, but the magazine disappeared. There was no temple locally. So later I was drafted into the army, and in Panama, I was sent to Panama. And there I found a Bhagavad Gita, the old blue Bhagavad Gita, and that's how I really became connected and started practicing.
Wow. How did you join the army? You got literally drafted? What year was that?
That was 71.
Oh, the draft was still going on.
Yeah, it was. I just made it under the wire, so to speak.
Good. And so where did you end up joining?
Well, then while I was in Panama, I began to practice writing to Srila Prabhupada. I'm sure you remember him. And,
yes, of course.
And then he put me in touch with Rameshwar, who sent me several boxes of books, and I began to do Sankirtan. He said, "You should do Sankirtan." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "That means you sell these books." So I went out and started. Every weekend I would distribute books to the soldiers, the Air Force people. There were 9 military bases in Panama at that time. And so then the devotees in late 74 came and opened a temple in Costa Rica. And so I started visiting and became connected. And when I got out of the army, I was supposed to go to Costa Rica. But then I had to collect a ticket for my temple president and myself to go to India. And I joined the library party.
Oh.
And with Mahabodhi Prabhu and some other Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and a few other very wonderful devotees. And I wanted to stay with that, but in Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada, my temple president, said he doesn't want to come back to Costa Rica, we need him. And Prabhupada said, you should go back. So that was the beginning of my Latin American experience.
And I don't believe that you've ever left Latin America since, huh?
Only once, from 84 to 80, so the beginning of 87, I was in Dallas with Tamal Krishna Maharaj trying to resolve the Acharya issue. And then I ended up going on Padayatra thinking, whatever happens in ISKCON, I'm safe on this Padayatra, chanting the holy name and preaching Krishna consciousness from village to village.
How is it that you became a GBC?
Well, I became regional secretary in Brazil, and then from there I was transferred to Mexico, and I was regional secretary for a few years. Then I went to Dallas, and then in the 1987 meetings, which were monumental changes in the structure of the leadership of ISKCON, I was asked to be a GBC for the area that I had originally worked in.
Hmm. Hmm. And what is that area that generally you're the GBC for?
That's Mexico, Central America, Colombia, Venezuela, basically the northern half of Latin America, and parts of the Caribbean.
Hmm. Hmm. There's a fair amount of challenge with the movement down there. I think in part because it's a bit of a poor country.
Well, the general area is poor, and except maybe for Panama, which has a lot of Indians, Chinese, and so there's a variety of possibilities of, you know, of expansion. And of course, the first years in Latin America, when I was there, were very challenging because I just happened to have, as a GBC, the countries that are most violent, a lot of violence in Colombia. At that time, there were regular bombings going on, machine gun fights, where sometimes we were right in the middle of one time. I just told the devotees to duck and chant the names of Lord Nrsimhadev. And then also in the three revolutions took place in Central America while I was GBC, and I would drive through, and one time I got stopped by a tank, and very convincing. And another time I saw people running from under a bridge, and I said, we better stop here. And they blew up the bridge, and so it took us a while to get around it. So we had some adventures, you know, in Latin America.
What were the three countries that went through revolution during your GBC position?
El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras. Now, Nicaragua was interesting because I met at that time, the dictator, which was just maybe a month before Srila Prabhupada left us. And he was, you know, I went up the steps of the government building, and I saw this man coming down with all these bodyguards and everything. So I just ran up to him, and bodyguards ran up to me. But he looked at me, he said, yeah, come here. And I said, what do you have? I said, I have a Bhagavad Gita. He said, Bhagavad Gita, I'm looking for Bhagavad Gita. I have so many Vedas in my library, and I want to. It turned out his son was going to West Point with Adi Keshava.
Oh.
Prabhu. So then he welcomed me. He gave us free gas, and anything we wanted. He said, I can give you a building. But unfortunately, just a few days later, the revolution started, and they told us to leave. The revolutionaries told us, leave or you'll never leave.
So why don't we dig into Latin America in a few minutes? But of course, the dramatic thing that's affecting us in the moment is this COVID-19. What's been your experience? How have you handled all of this?
Well, of course, I'm used to traveling practically every week, and so I've had to transform my preaching. Being in one place has been very good for my sadhana and my health, especially. So that's been an advantage for me. Of course, maybe a disadvantage for others. And one of the things, of course, that I found very valuable is opening up, which is something I actually remembered you about, where you have emphasized in several GBC meetings the importance of internet preaching. And I was not doing much of that because a very demanding zone, and I would go from place to place and place to place. And then, kind of being, when you go to a place, your tendency is to sometimes become over-involved. And I found that this platform of preaching through Zoom and other mediums of communication has been very beneficial, because it brings me to the point of a global vision. You know, of course, we've always had global vision on the GBC, but it becomes more of a reality with when you're actually preaching to audiences that you never saw before.
So in a sense, you're able to connect with more people.
Oh, yes, yes. I can, you know, I've given classes in places that I didn't know existed. And so it's been very wonderful like that. And to also, I found that it allows so many devotees to hear classes and understand, get to know people, get to know leaders, you know, that they would have probably never encountered in their travels.
Do you imagine that many of these things are now just going to become part of our norm once they get control of this virus? We're going to just actually imbibe these things so strongly that it's just going to be part of our new life?
In my case, it definitely will be, and I think it will. I think that, as you have emphasized the internet preaching, we've all experienced that not only you can do it just by, mostly the idea was doing through email before, but now this platform of video conferencing and reaching hundreds and even thousands of people at times is a whole new world of interaction.
So basically, this big negative thing is producing at least one significant positive thing.
Yes, I found, I found many, just like sometimes we have a false sense of security. Of course, Srila Prabhupada said there are three things very necessary for a civilization, which is that people can eat, people can feel happy, and people can feel secure. But when the sense of security becomes overwhelming and the goal of life, thinking 30 years, 40 years ahead, when it's very difficult to, predict what will happen 20 or 30 years from now, I think people are waking up to living more in the moment, and which is very good for Krishna consciousness.
Relationships have therefore strengthened in your zone and with all the devotees that you relate with.
Yes, in my zone and out of my zone, it's very amazing. And also, I found that I found in the people that I'm preaching to, especially in new audiences, that families are more united, and we go back to family values. It's easier to preach about morality, ethics, and many things which in the modern consumer society have fallen into the background.
Beautiful. How are you connecting with new people in this time?
Well, basically through this medium, this platform of video preaching, and more internet interaction, sending out messages. And I found that just like we give a lecture, just like here on the Strategic Planning GBC platform, there's announcements every day. And on those announcements, it says, please inform your friends, or please, let other people know. So this is something that happens so much more. Just like when we travel and visit a temple, you may see 20 or 30 new people, but now I see people who normally wouldn't be able to come. Sometimes they're cooking in the kitchen, sometimes they're cleaning the house, but they're listening and they're connecting.
You take our messages and you send them out?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
When the messages that we produce, you're forwarding them to a lot of people?
Yes, I do, and of course, it's amazing because it keeps me more in touch with so many things that I normally wouldn't be in touch with. So it's also very beneficial for me, and receiving communications from others and leadership and what's going on in the world.
We're our team is going to be very, or is, since some of them are already listening, they're going to be very happy with this, of course, because this is what we're trying to do. So quite happy that that you're doing that.
Well, I do my best to try to serve ISKCON, the GBC, and the devotees. So.
Let's go back to Latin America. I think I've talked with you on several occasions. It's a challenging place. Tell us what some of these challenges are.
Well, of course, our biggest challenge is it's kind of a paradoxical situation where, on the one hand, we, it's so easy to make devotees in Latin America. People are very receptive. I've always found that Latin America in general, because of it has kind of a mystical background of the Aztecs, the Incas, and all these different people. In Brazil, there's a lot of metaphysical groups. And so there's a lot of interest, And but we have the economic challenge. That's our biggest challenge. And of course, I still have 3 of the most violent countries in my zone in the world. So that sometimes is a challenge, violence, and sometimes corruption, bribery. These countries that's the norm. And to try to teach people to be honest, to be straightforward, to be, it's so ingrained in their consciousness to respond to their external environment that it's a challenge in trying to preach ethics, what to speak of spiritual ethics.
One, I am aware of numerous worldwide organizations that have that collect funds to help develop areas of the world that are more struggling economically. I don't think we really have that here in ISKCON, do we?
Not to the degree that it should be. Of course, Srila Prabhupada wanted each temple to be autonomous. So I've always thought when we can come to that point, not that just to give money, but to help poor areas develop, which is something I've seen from the Mormons. They go to an area, they set everything up, and then they say, now we set it up for you, now you carry it on from here. So something like that would be wonderful.
So in other words, investment.
Yes, exactly. Investment and oversight from maybe a more expert team in another area that's had the expertise and ability to develop something where when you don't have any facility, you don't have that experience. So that would be, I did have a situation like that with London at one point. Unfortunately, my local leader got sick and he left, and then so it kind of fizzled out. But these kinds of relationships between stronger areas and weaker areas would be very beneficial. And we would get a lot more, it's like dollars for people in one sense, meaning you invest, but you'll get some benefit. Generally, more developed countries, they depend on many third world people for doing many of the things that need to be done. I found that in different religions that they do that. So.
Yeah. So the people of your zone in this Latin America and Central America, there's some almost like a natural inquisitiveness toward Krishna consciousness when you because of their nature or something like that.
Yes, I found that of course one of my main areas is Mexico, and Mexico has a long past of the Incas, the Aztecs, the Mayans, and so they had a very mystical side to all of these groups, and since people identify in any place in the world, they identify with their roots, so they feel these mystical roots, and it becomes something that makes them taking to Krishna consciousness very easily.
Is the movement in Latin America growing?
Yes, it's growing almost everywhere. It could grow more, but there's a lot of interest, and you know, everywhere that I know it's growing. Some places are more challenging because one of the challenges we face also is brain drain, meaning that sometimes more capable and more intelligent people don't feel that there's a future for them. So they look for another more developed place, more developed country, more developed temple where they can, feel like I have a future, I can develop here, I can come up, and they may not feel that in their native country.
Mm. In certain parts of like the United States and Europe and even Australia and other places, many of our temples are serving the Indian expats, and you go to a Sunday feast and you'll see the great majority of the people attending are of Indian descent. In your zone, I would imagine there's not that many Indian people, yeah?
Almost none.
Almost none. Wow.
In like Mexico City, we may get one or two, or three or four in an event, or maybe 10 on Jamastami, because it's a huge city. In Central America, only Panama. Panama has an Indian congregation, mostly Sindhi, and so they come and they help with the temple. But everywhere else, you rarely see an Indian. You see a native Indian maybe, but not an Eastern Indian.
So ISKCON in these Western countries have generally become almost dependent on the preaching to Indians. You just don't have that facility at all.
No, not at all. Only
that must be another challenge.
Well, it is. It is. On the other hand, it's an opportunity, as Srila Prabhupada wrote to several leaders in the beginning, cultivate the local people. So we're forced to do that, whether we want to or not.
That's great. What do you see globally the challenges? You're a GBC member. You have both a zonal duty and a global duty. What are some of the challenges that ISKCON faces on a global level?
Well, of course, there's so many. Such a great variety of political situations, economic situations, cultural situations. As sometimes we see the stark cultural difference between India and Western countries, and then Asia has its own flavor. Like I remember in China, the few times that I went, such a strong sense of family, and so this is one of our biggest challenges, to try to find a unified platform amongst so much diversity.
What other challenges are there in ISKCON?
Well, I think that I've always, Prabhupada wanted us to establish Varnashram. And I've always felt that Varnashram encompasses all of the political and economic philosophies. Just like you have democracy with the Brahmins, you have autocracy with Kshatriyas, you have capitalism with the Vaishyas, and you have communism with the Shudras, and you have anarchy with the sages. So they're not under anybody. So I've always seen that this was Prabhupada's vision, that give a tool, a mechanism where everything that everybody wants or strives for or tries to establish is included. So I've always felt that Srila Prabhupada, his vision was very unique. I find sometimes devotees say, well, Varnashram is impractical, but I find it to be the most practical solution. And the few times I've had a few opportunities to preach to the president of Guyana, the president of Mexico at one point, and I've explained Varnashram, and they like it. They like the idea. So it's not something, especially when I explained it in a way that, you know, it can complement what they're trying to achieve. So I've found that doing that in the same diverse and very, you know, most people are very convinced that our system is the best. So I find this to be a challenge, but a worthwhile challenge.
In ISKCON, do we have clarity on what varnashram is?
Well, I think we have the basic, we have the skeleton. We understand the divisions of varna and ashram. We understand people have different tendencies to work and different spiritual strengths or spiritual needs. I see that as the seed, and that those communities, especially, of course, we all know that Hungary is probably the most, the Hungarian farm is the most varna ashram friendly and community that we have, and it's a project. I remember one time Srila Prabhupada said that our farm communities are the actual ultimate goal, because they show people what we're teaching them in the books, if we do it right, of course. And not that we have a farm. I remember one farm we had in Colombia that we had to go and buy flowers. So I said, this is not exactly Prabhupada's idea, that we go to the market, buy vegetables and flowers and bring them back to the farm. But so there are challenges, but I find that you know, Prabhupada gave us challenges, and that's what keeps us going, keeps us enthusiastic, keeps us, you know, on our toes.
Sometimes I have looked at ISKCON and wonder if we have enough what you might call organization and global hierarchy and clarity on how we're actually united from an organizational point of view. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we have a long way to go, you know, and again, I think that the COVID, just going a little bit back to the COVID, is helping us to become more united. We're going to have, you know, we're meeting more frequently now. We're in touch with one another, and but definitely our strategic planning, which is the platform bringing all of these wonderful events to the devotees, is giving us the opportunity to become organized. And I think that most GBCs see the need, but unfortunately, as you get older, and most of us are older, it's harder to change, and that's a challenge in itself.
What that whole notion of change sometimes is beguiling, because our whole life is devoted to change. We found ourselves in the material world, and it's change to becoming a devotee that is going to get us out of here and return us to our eternal relationship with the Lord. So our whole life is change, yet sometimes we're struggling with change. I mean, what's that dynamic all about?
Well, I think it's a combination of, sometimes we're forced to change, like from infancy to childhood to adulthood to old age, as Bhagavad Gita points out from the very beginning. So that's an obligation. We accept change, but sometimes we resist it. Starting with our bodily changes, we like the changes until we become young adults. Then from that point on, we're not so inclined to change much more, but we'll be forced. So voluntary change is a product of coming together, discussing, seeing the need, and I found that necessity is the greatest impetus to change.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing that is concerning to me about ISKCON is that today's many devotees never really spent significant time in the ashram like you did or I did, and didn't have that what would you call sacrifice and austerity kind of element built into our being. and then as a result, they're more family oriented, and maybe don't sacrifice a lot for ISKCON. Is this a valid perception?
Very valid perception, but there's another advantage to that. Of course, they are forced to sacrifice, as Srila Prabhupada explained once in Narottam Das Thakur's phrase that samsara vishanale divanishi hiwajwale, that samsara is forcing me day and night to work very hard. So Prabhupada said, everyone is working very hard, 24 hours dedicated to that particular sacrifice that they have to make for their family, their friends, their economy. And so just as Rupa Goswami, as Krishna recommends, and Rupa Goswami also, Param Justvani Vartate, if you get a higher taste, we're already sacrificing, so just bring that sacrifice into the spiritual arena, which of course is a challenge. I always mention to devotees that you have a double challenge, because you have to take care, you have to be expert and take care of your material side, and you have to develop your spiritual side. So we have a double challenge, which is the price of getting a small price for getting such a perfect philosophy, perfect lifestyle. So, but everything has its price.
Let's just spend a little time talking about ISKCON going out into the future. You've mentioned a few of the challenges, but how do you see what is it going to take to make ISKCON more established and to be closer to what Srila Prabhupada desires and what his vision is of ISKCON? How do we get there?
Well, of course, commitment. Commitment. And, I find that one of my greatest inspirations is to see Srila Prabhupada's commitment to the orders and instructions of his spiritual master, even in, especially when he came to the US, when he arrived, he said, I don't understand it. I see everyone's in the mode of passion and ignorance. What am I going to do here? But you're my Lord. You make me dance. You move me however you want. I'm your servant. So really, really emulating this mood of Srila Prabhupada to, because moving into the future, adjusting ourselves.
Uh-oh. We lost you, Maharaj. So Sharmasaki, what do we need to do to get Maharaj back? Sharmasaki, are you there? Can't hear. You're muted.
I'm writing to Maharaj right now.
So probably what Maharaj should do is log off and log back on, maybe. Why don't you advise him to do that?
Yes, I'm doing that.
Okay, good. So just speaking to our audience, we're going to try to get Maharaj back as soon as we can. I guess since we're still live, I'll just say a few things about COVID. Today, it is more dangerous than it's been at any point in time since this COVID started. The amount of infections is increasing, particularly in the United States, but in other jurisdictions, such as in India. This is a real difficult disease. Really hurts the body. Even if you're younger and you catch that disease and then you get through it, some of the scientific stuff is showing that it's going to stay with you for years to come as a potential. Maharaj, you're back.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm staying.
Just filling in some comments about COVID, waiting for you to come back.
I'm sorry, I'm staying in a hotel, and the daily internet allowance was up, so I had to sign in again.
Okay.
I'm not used to that factor, so.
Right, right. So where were we? You cut off basically where we were talking more about our future in ISKCON. You were speaking about sacrifice and commitment, and then that's where we got cut off.
Yes, moving into the future is, to me, is a sense of a commitment, a challenge that, especially as you mentioned, now we're more of a congregational movement, a challenge that we can easily accept and become successful in by the having more people doing less, maybe because they have their own personal challenges, so to speak. So I find that, involving more people, which is, of course, what we're doing now, is a great way to do that. And we should continue to do it. I feel, even COVID or no COVID, we should continue to do this, these broadcasts, this connection with leadership. This will bring us as an international community together and working as a team. Usually we speak about a team, we think about the GBC or my regional or my temple or my community team, but we don't speak so much about a global team. It hasn't become a reality, and the more that it does, I do feel that it will bring us success in the future, and many of our challenges can be met and overcome.
Mm. The future sometimes seems very bright to me, and then we get hit with all the problems and the difficulties that seem to make it difficult to accomplish anything. What does it take to plow through those issues and stay enthused about ISKCON and its overall mission?
Well, of course, again, I go back to Srila Prabhupada. Many of those issues were, Prabhupada had his vision, and he had to stop and go back and okay, here's this problem in this temple, and this issue between two people or many people. So I don't see that will ever, hopefully diminish, but not be extinguished. It's just something that's part of life that all of us experience at every moment, and we shouldn't allow it to curb our enthusiasm.
Often, Srila Prabhupada, when he speaks about enthusiasm, you see that he's also throwing in that word patience. So that, there's always enthusiasm, but then at the same time, patience. Maybe you could just speak on that point.
Yes, Rupa Goswami gives us the formula for favorable devotional service, utsaha nishchaya dairya, that enthusiasm, which Srila Prabhupada said, is the driving force. But if you have enthusiasm and you don't have sufficient faith, then whenever there's a great obstacle, one can become disillusioned. And so having the faith, and from that faith, having the patience to wait for it, as the Bhagavatam recommends us, tate nukampam susamikshamana, we should patiently await the mercy of Krishna. Of course, not so patiently that we're laid back in a hammock with a coconut, and whenever Krishna wants to do something, I'll participate. But we should be inviting Krishna to participate in that which Srila Prabhupada has given us as our objective. So patience is a very, very important thing. We can't expect Krishna to do things according to our desire, but we should try to unite our desire, or make our desire one with Krishna's desire.
So we're getting close to the end of our time together. Maybe you have some final words for our audience from your GBC perspective.
Yes. Well, one of the things I wanted to mention is that, one of my greatest inspirations in throughout my spiritual life has been the what I consider to be Srila Prabhupada's prime example, which was that Prabhupada cherished and felt that his prime duty to humanity was to translate Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and of course he had a list of other literatures that he wanted to do, but he sacrificed that to keep ISKCON on track, to make sure that especially this concept of GBC was ingrained and instilled in the minds of the devotees, that it was functioning, even though sometimes Srila Prabhupada in the beginning, of course, what can you expect with 21, 22-year-old GBCs or 24-year-old gurus? So we've had these challenges of very young and inexperienced people. So Srila Prabhupada took the time out from his most cherished activity to actually, so I'm getting a little echo, to actually make sure that ISKCON was on track, that it was established, that it would go into the future in the way that he wanted. And I find this to be a source of inspiration for me to do that. Sometimes I have my preferences. I would rather sit around, read the Bhagavatam all day, and I would be very happy doing that. But I don't think Srila Prabhupada would be very happy with me doing that.
Okay, Maharaj, we really appreciate your valuable time and the illuminations that you've offered us. I think the notion of commitment and sacrifice to ISKCON is really, really important. We want to thank you so much. So, Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Bo.
Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you. Hare Bo.